Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism. And I have a new podcast called Navigating Narcissism. You can check it out wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want more information about it and links and all of that are in the video notes. So please check it out. It's very different than what you hear on this channel. And I think it's going to give you some interesting new perspectives and new really important ways of thinking about narcissism and some fascinating stories. So today we're going to talk about this, because I've heard this over and over again, this statement. A person saying, oh my gosh, I am a survivor of a long-term narcissistic relationship, and I feel like I wasted my life. So let's break that down. Of all the many things that survivors of narcissistic abuse go through, regret is probably one of the hardest. I hear this idea that I've wasted my life from folks who come into their recognition of narcissism and how it has affected them quite a bit later in life. Perhaps a 60-year-old who finally recognizes the parasitic nature of the relationship that their parent had with them. And shortly, they learn that right before their parent dies, for example. A 70-year-old person after a 40-year marriage figures it out. A person who worked 35 years in a job and recognizes they were underpaid and underappreciated and now are in a precarious position going into older age because of a controlling, tyrannical boss who claimed that they had their best interests at heart, but didn't. It's not always this long term. Some folks in even briefer relationships or even at younger ages also feel the same way. I feel like I wasted my life. There are those who simply don't get it and those who do. And there's that tiny sliver of human beings who won the human lottery and never have to deal with narcissism. When you transition from not understanding narcissism to understanding it, it can be a painful cold bucket of water in your face. It can literally be physically painful when you look back and believe that you wasted your adult life on a relationship that was never going to yield compassion or love. I don't believe that. I don't believe you wasted anything. You did live a life. You may have lived it under a faulty premise. For example, my parent loved me or my partner was invested in our marriage. But you did live your life. Many survivors of narcissistic abuse end up with some real virtues that either they brought in or cultivated during the course of the relationship. Patience, resilience, resolve, problem-solving skills, compassion, despite it being tested on the daily, empathy, kindness, wisdom. Now, I do have to acknowledge also what gets lost in these relationships. Self-compassion, self-forgiveness, peace of mind, a sense of safety, and accurate self-appraisal of your own strengths, and your willingness to take chances on aspirations and goals. That's a lot to lose, but you did live a life. I recently spoke with a 60-year survivor of narcissistic abuse. I gotta tell you, after listening to her, I didn't understand why she wasn't a rager, angry, punching walls. She said yes, her life was hard. It is still hard. She's still in a relationship, but it was also good. She said, I raised children. I saw things that prior generations in my family never did. My children are doing well. I have grandchildren. I like my home, even though I share it with a narcissistic fool. And I finally am able to see this person is a narcissistic fool, and I'm no longer bothered by it. I love to read and watch movies and cook. I did have a life, and I recognize it could have been a different life, but isn't that true of any of us? I was like, okay, that's true. And I know this personally in myself as a survivor. Once a day at least, I find myself wondering how different my life would have been without narcissistic abuse in it. Would I have achieved more or better goals? Would I have had different love stories? Would I have had an easier life? I don't know. And this is the life I have, so I won't know. For me, my experience, coupled with my training and education as a researcher and as a clinician, drove me to take a really big chance and talk about narcissistic abuse publicly. It's something that's still not recognized by the mental health profession, so some people look at me sideways. But I had an experience, and I try to use those experiences to help people. And I do believe in my work some people have been helped. I do wish that some things had been easier in my life, but if they had been, I wouldn't be sitting here on YouTube talking people through this mess of narcissistic abuse. We end up somewhere and doing what we do on the basis of our experiences. Nobody wastes a life. Listen, and this is going to sound idiotic, but listen, let's say you only have $10 in your pocket. That's all you got, and you spend it on candy bars and soda, and those candy bars and soda give you joy. I don't know, did you waste that money? I don't think you did. Someone else may come around and say, well, there's so many better things you could have done with that money. But you did what you did, and you loved the candy bars and soda, and it was fine, okay? The waste, actually, if anywhere the waste comes from believing in the narcissist. Walking through the world feeling unloved, that can feel like a waste, and I understand that too. You would have experienced life differently if you had grown up or felt feeling loved or seen. However, I still don't think it was a waste. You were still in the world. You were still learning and having experiences. I actually think that whenever you come into awareness about narcissistic abuse, you can run with that lesson. You get to spend the rest of your life, once you get it, you get to spend the rest of your life seeing the world more clearly. It's almost like going into a casino and being able to spot the winning machine, or being able to see the cards, or having magic dice. You can actually avoid being played and maybe even win. When done right, once you get it, you can actually take back joy, because the narcissists steal that when you're with them. But now you see what they're about. You can stare with wonder at a night sky, or feel the cool rain on a warm day, or watch a hummingbird out the window with wonder, and keep it to yourself and not let the narcissist suck that joy away, because now you get it. And you know not to share it with them because they'll minimize it, and you get to be in it. Personally, I think surviving narcissistic abuse is sort of an unnecessary experience. I am never going to suggest that someone go out and seek narcissistic abuse out so they can learn something. Trust me, it's going to find you. But it's like a painful, torturous form of finishing school or graduate school. Listen, I went to school for a really, really, really long time to do what I had to do. While I was a student, I was broke. It was hard. I didn't make any money. But it wasn't a waste. I learned a lot. It shaped me. I got over the debt. You learn a lot from these messed up relationships, whether it's school or narcissistic relationships. Not always lessons you wanted, but none of it is a waste. Grief is a big part of the landscape of growing beyond the narcissistic relationship. We grieve the life we wanted, that we could have had, that we didn't have. But none of it was a waste. Because to spend time ruminating on the narcissistic relationship, once you understand it, that is a waste. A narcissistic relationship is a masterclass on instincts. You suspected as a child that your parent actually wasn't a very nice person, or that your sibling was mean, or as you grew up, you saw that your partner really wasn't treating you well, or that your boss really was an asshole. Your instincts were on. And once you get it, you can welcome all those instincts back. All of this was a honing of your instincts. Understanding it brings those instincts back to life. And listen, I've been doing this for a while. I am 56, and it was only recently that I'm seeing this much, much more clearly. It wasn't a waste. For me, every broken heart, broken promise, and sadness I experienced, ultimately, it all gets poured into these videos, into words in a book, and into my lifetime commitment to helping survivors. That is how I try to recycle the anguish of narcissistic abuse into something good. So I want you to view this, your healing, as a bit of a recycling project. Take that so-called waste and turn it into something. It might be helping others. It may be pursuing your goals. It may be lifting stuff out of that bucket list. It may be simply cutting other narcissists out of your life. It is never, ever too late, ever. I hear from survivors in their 80s. And think of the alternative, that you could have gone to the end of your days never getting it. It is never too late to start an act 2. Give yourself time for grief, and then start recycling this so-called waste of time into a life. Sometimes the new thing that comes out of the old thing is better than anything you could have imagined. And for those of you who do want to do that deeper dive into healing, that information's in the video notes too. But healing is such an important part of it. We talk about the narcissist all the time. Let's focus on you breaking out of these cycles and viewing this all as a waste. It wasn't a waste. It was just part of this journey. Thanks again.